Hello there, I'm David Fox. I am a game designer from way back, and you are listening to Scene World Podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome to the podcast. This is Scene World. My name is AJ. That is Joerg right over there.
Here.
Right
Hello,
there.
guys. Hello.
How's it going?
So, yeah, good.
Yeah, in a minute we have Christian Spanik. He is Spanik. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. He's huge. He's a TV guy in Germany. He's kind of the Joerg refers to him as the and I can't think of the guy's name because
Stuart Chaffee?
Yes, the Stuart Chaffee of Germany. And I actually, whilst looking around online, I've found quite a few things with him in it. So he's not just in Germany; he's elsewhere as well.
Yeah. He's mainly known for being a pioneer in the web TV field.
Mm-hmm.
He did web TV before anybody else.
Yeah.
And he also wrote Amiga books before anybody else. Yeah.
So he's kind of the Stuart Chaffee and the Jim Butterfield of Germany.
Maybe, but he is not so much of a tech nerd guy that he would go down on the component level.
Well, nobody needs to know that. He's an awesome guy. We're gonna talk to him in a minute. Before that, we've got a little bit of news. Not too much. It's summer. It's the summer doldrums kind of the scene. So
35 degrees Celsius. Oh my God, it's certainly summer.
Wow, that's pretty warm. It's not quite there here.
Yeah. It's funny because August is often one of the most hottest month where I live, and then September it's going down.
It's only about 25 here Celsius. That's like 75 degrees Fahrenheit for Americans.
Nice. Ooh. So. Yeah. Anyway, so what we got to talk about? News. Gamescom mainly, and Gamescom for the retro people were really good. We had a lot of interviews. We never had so much interviews as we had before. For example, European head of operations Hans Ippisch of Intellivision. That was a pretty big one.
That is.
Especially because we mentioned him in the podcast before, that you would love to talk to him, and so I had the chance to interview him at Gamescom. Also, Konami announced a successor to Contra, which was a big hit on the NES, and it's awesome to see another episode of that for the Switch and all. And THQ Nordic, one of the biggest publisher in Sweden/Austria, announced and presented Comanche, which was a helicopter action game in the year 2000, and they are making a reboot, and it's going to be a really good with single and multiplayer modes and easy controls, and even supporting the old controls and all that stuff. Was really very great. One of the most surprising one was that we got an interview with Nok Wu, lead graphic artists from Route 59 Studios, and they are working on a manga adventure style game in Austria, and the designers are all Vietnamese, and the publisher is from China. And the target market is the European retro scene. That's a totally...
Pretty international, yeah.
Like, whoa! Are you kidding me? Yeah, right.
Very cool. And you've done some interviews, and there's some video that you've put out about this already.
Yes.
And so we'll be linking to a lot of that in the podcast description below. So.
But I'm not finished there yet. I just finished today the one with Frederick Schreiber from 3D Realms, and they are working on successors using the Doom and the Duke Nukem 3D engine.
Okay.
So that's really awesome. Classical 3D action games, and
it is awesome.
Yeah. So a lot of food for the retro people like us.
Yes, we'll put links to everything that's up at the time of this release, if it's not all out by then.
Well, we can just link to the playlist. Then people can watch that all by the time this is out. And we also met Endstream at the Gamescom booth.
Yes, you did.
That was awesome. So thanks a lot again, guys, to meet you in person. And also David Fox was there for over an hour geeking out with us about Maniac Mansion and Zack McCracken. And I also had a 10-15 minutes meeting with Chris Bateman. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough time to make a photo with him, but he was definitely there.
Awesome.
So everybody kept the promise, and we made an appointment to see them all at our booth, which is quite amazing if you see that video game pioneers or computer game pioneers are actually taking the effort to come to our booth to talk to us rather than us coming to them.
I also saw from a video that was posted by our good buddy Synad that our booth was pretty much the poppinest booth in the place. I mean, it was Martin had turned it into a dance party at some point, and it looked pretty amazing.
Yeah, we had a booth party this year, but I guess that is something for the Gamescom special edition podcast.
Either way.
Anyway,
so we've got the best one.
So anyway, I was totally out for a week regarding news. So it's up to AJ to tell you what we missed.
So probably the biggest piece of news that affects us kind of personally and you know on a personal level is that Nick Vivid, who we love, who is recently put out his album Blissed Out, and we're going to put a link in the podcast description for you where you can buy that and get the cassette version or CD or digital download or whatever you want to do. He is stepping away because of some life changes and some things going on. He's stepping away from the C64 for a bit. So he has removed, he's taken down his BBS Afterlife. And he thanks everybody that he's met and has become a friend and whatnot. And he hopes to be back in a year or so. And we'll be here when he gets back because we love him to death. He's one of my favorite people in the world. And
yeah, it's not the first break he had. He had another break before he was member of Scene World. So he's really one of the geniuses of the scene at this point. Because I mean, aside from coding and music, I mean, the guy is he's the one that he coded Strike Term. He coded the new CCGMS that works with the 64 Ultimate. He designed the Strike Term modem, which I have, which is amazing and which is available for free. I mean, most of the stuff that he does, he just puts out for free for everybody. Here's the plans. You can print it and make it yourself. I got mine from him because. And the first thing he did for us was NTSC fixing Voodoo Noter.
Yes. Yeah. So
thanks to him, there's an NTSC fixed version of Voodoo Noter.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So we will miss him profoundly for the year that he's not around, but we're hoping that he comes back.
On the positive side, there is a new SeaWorld issue 29, and we just released this one day before build-up day for Gamescom. And I have to say thanks for Martin Wisnowski, Martin Ammann, and myself to sit in a Skype call at 9 p.m. working together to put this out and release it on the homepage, and also to Rupert from the scripted Amiga emulator who helped us fixing everything. So it would also work right
and
now
also
on
to
the
Oliver
homepage.
who came in clutch.
Yeah. So Oliver Weyerbrooks, also one of our heroes, also co-designer of the DTV, very known guy. And once again, I feel we have the best people in the staff. Otherwise, our crap wouldn't be so successful.
Well, yeah, I mean that's what it comes down to, is that we've got amazing people that are part of the staff, and that without which this magazine wouldn't be a magazine at all.
Or a podcast, or YouTube, or Twitch, or whatever, or Gamescom, or so, and so on. Right. So that means, guys, now you can enjoy issue 29 on the web for the Amiga and the C64. And this also goes down to 28, so you can also watch 28 Amiga on the web. It's all out there.
Yes. So I got some more news here, some game news. So there's just been released on the 64, Chopper Command. Is I guess it's an adaptation of a game that was on another platform. I don't know what platform that was, but the adaptation was handled by Antonio Savona, who is, that's Planet Golf. I mean, he's huge. He's in a lot of games. Steve Day and Saul Cross, who we spoke to on the podcast, and again, who is one of the big, game coders in the scene right now.
Wasn't it like music composer, graphic guys, not coders?
No, he coded, because Saul Cross, one of his first games was the North Sea Inferno or something. Saul Cross is one of those guys that does everything.
Yeah, that's funny, because we didn't know that until after we did the interview, where Andrew Fisher was a part in, and we actually discovered by his stories that he worked in the same building at Rob Hubbard at the same time Rob Hubbard worked there. Like, oh my god.
Right, so that is available. You can download it apparently directly from the CSDB. So that's cool. So it's a free game. Also, off of the 64 topic, there is a new game called Alpha Ray, which is a really, really amazing looking shooter game for the +4 and or the expanded 16, the C16. It's horizontal scrolling. It's a shoot 'em up. So it's you're beep beep shoot kind of thing.
Beep beep.
But
shoot,
beep beep shoot yeah, which I don't think that's ever happened in a game. I don't know what I'm talking about. But
beep, beep, shoot.
But the graphics in this game they look amazing, and that's probably because of the fact that the +4 has slightly better graphics capabilities than the 64 does. It's got a lot more colors.
Incompatible with anything else.
Yes. But it's interesting to see software made for the +4, and there's a budget disc edition, which is just the 5 1/4-inch floppy. There's a Premium Plus edition, which has a plastic case, full artwork, all that stuff. And then there's a collector's edition box set, which has a glossy box, a soundtrack CD, and a bunch of other, I guess they call them feelies, the things you get in the games. So that's available for sale and from Cytronic Software. So we'll put a link to that in the podcast description as well. So if you've got a +4 or you've got an emulator for a +4, because those exist, check out the game because it looks amazing. And that's what I got. That's all I got.
Great. That's 18 minutes of news. Not bad.
Hot damn. Groove Train.
Yeah.
So Christian Spanik is right over
over there somewhere
around. Yeah. So he's somewhere. He might be under the desk. I'm not really sure. We gotta look around for him. And so let's go and find him and talk to him about what he's doing right now.
So today we have Christian Spanik on the show and the podcast, and he is known actually for being a pioneer in the computer journalism TV field and web TV about that. So welcome, nice to talk to you finally.
Thanks for having me. Hi Joerg, hi AJ. I hope you're all well.
Absolutely.
Great, yes.
Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah. So I've done an interview series with you for 2 years about your past that you did. And now we want to talk about your present, because you are running a website, Digisaurier, where you have a look at the past or at the current technology with the knowledge of the past. Well, that's something different. So let's talk about what you do nowadays. And I know you also run live TV shows, for example, on LinkedIn and all that stuff. So let's talk about that. How did that all start, that you decided to create this website and make this, journey?
Let's put it like that. I had the feeling that the classical TV, especially in that field, will come to an end. I think this is one of the most important points for me, finding out that we had several years, I think almost 20 years of discussing computers and computer technology on TV. And then I think, especially in Germany and also in Austria and Switzerland, time was over for it. Too much magazines, YouTube came up, all this stuff. So I thought it better to leave before they, bag you and put you out of the studio. So I decided to change the whole idea of presenting computer themes on moving pictures. And I came to the point, why not do it with the technology I was reporting on and use that technology for reporting with it. So this was the idea of creating channels and ideas and programs about computers. And the other thing is I found out is when you are on the net, you have to be very focused on themes. If you are too broad, it doesn't work, because people don't switch from one channel to the other and decide to stuck with you or not. It's more that they decide to find something, and we're searching for it. And if you are not too clear on the focus you have, you always, from my point of view, have the problem people don't know what you want from them. So that's why I decided to start with Digisaurier, which was talking about especially the whole point about computer history, especially in Germany and in Austria and in Switzerland. And on the other hand, also discussing actual things, for example, like AI or things like that, with the knowledge from the past. Because, both of you know, if you're a little bit longer in that field, you saw a lot of things coming up, popping up, being highlighted, being a great new thing, the next big thing, and then suddenly disappear. Some stay and then disappears. And so I said, could be a good idea of having both points at a focus, being, not actually the guy who say, oh, there's this new handy and look at that feature and this feature, more discuss, do we need that? Which is, on the other hand, also technology positive. So we are not the guys who say, you don't need this is bullshit. But we try to check out if you really need it in your normal life. And if not, Digisaurier normally won't report on it at all.
You have also mentioned sometimes our content. For example, you mentioned Chuck Peddle, and I remember reading about it on your blog, and you said the special thing about this is he doesn't talk to a lot of people. So you said in your blog post on Digisaurier that this alone is something special and should be considered rare. And I have to admit, at this time I spoke to him, I didn't consider it to be so special. I just emailed some people and inquired if they would like to talk to us, and he did. So it's interesting to see it from your point of view as a professional journalist, Because for me, it was just sitting here and listening 3 hours to Shack Pedal stories. And for you, it was much, much more, it seems.
You know, I think on one side, the technology which you use to broadcast has changed. On the other side, also the behavior of the people has changed. When you were asking somebody, whoever, 20 years ago for an interview, you had to do with a whole lot of people if he was one of the big shots, a management or the company communication staff, all those guys. And now it's more like you call somebody and he calls you back and you just do the interview. Mm-hmm. So quite a lot of way of communicating, giving interviews, talking to people has changed quite a lot. So it was, for me, for example, if you look at the story from Nolan Bushnell, I was really chasing that guy in the Silicon Valley. He was, I think he created a new company every 6 months at days. So when I was in one company, he always was away. I was in the next company, he already was away. So it took me really a while to find out where the hell he is and how I can contact him. And this was the time before the big net thing. So you didn't have all those internet tools you have now to find somebody. Means from my point of view, it is, in professional journalism, it has changed because now I think almost anybody is willing to give you an interview on which channel ever, because everybody thinks, you don't know, perhaps it's important. It's so much of channels, so much of shows that people really don't know how to decide. So this is, from my point of view, I think while they decide, if it looks professional to me, then I go for it. If it's a small blog or a big blog or whatever. Years ago, it was a question of from who you are. Are you from, in Germany, ARD and ZDF or not? If not, I don't have time for you. So these things have changed from my point of view.
So what is the thing that is the most special about Digisaurier and what you do nowadays that other portals don't do, you think?
I think it's a way of how we look at things. Mm-hmm. It's not a question of how do we have different topics? No, we don't have, because the topics are given by something. If you have a Cambridge Analytica scandal on Facebook, this is simply a scandal, no doubt about it. So you can decide to report on it or not. But the question is always how you report on it. What do you say to people? For example, the Digisaurier way was to say, yeah, we understand that some people now say, I will quit Facebook, I go out of it, something like that. But we said, perhaps it has more to do with the things, how you created your friendship list on Facebook, and not so much what Facebook is doing, who you get in your timeline. It's a question of how much you tell Facebook about yourself, and not so much a question, what is Facebook doing with it? And on the other hand, this is no new message. If you don't pay for something, you pay, but only in a different way, and you did not know.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a big surprise. It wasn't okay what was going on with Cambridge Analytica, but my point is you can't blame the industry, Facebook, Google, whoever, for everything which happens to you if you are not the one who is thinking about what you're doing on those internet things. So this is perhaps the different way we look at it, and perhaps a different way we decide about. Another thing is what we do, which is a different thing, is we have a little series which is called What the Heck Is. What the heck is, for example, what the heck is Spotify? I'm quite sure a lot of the young audience watching the show now say, hey, what is it? What a question? Sure, Spotify. Yeah, but a lot of people haven't grown up with Spotify. They grew up with CDs, right. With LPs, with things to, or with a Walkman, things where I don't know. No, I don't have one here. Or you where grown up with things like that, a Game Boy. So this was great new technology nowadays. So I don't know if you know, there's a series on YouTube which says what kids do with things like a Walkman. So they give them actual kids, they get a Walkman and they say, so this thing makes music, figure out how. It's so funny what them trying to get music out of those things because they don't know how.
Yeah.
And now just take it on the other side. If you're not grown up with Spotify and you saw perhaps in Facebook or whatever where you are, somebody is listening to that and that on Spotify. So you think, Spotify is a kind of music listening thing where everybody knows what I'm listening to, which is not true. But that's what you find out about it, first of all. So like I just described with the kids on an old Walkman, it's the same thing with older people. And I mean, it's about 40 to 50 up, which perhaps don't know really what is Spotify. But the problem is everybody around, if they say, yeah, you use Spotify, everybody's, yeah, sure. Nobody never says, I don't know what it is. So we decided to make a small series which is called What the Heck Is, for example, Spotify. And we tell the people what the heck it is and what they can do with it. And it's not a thing which is only for young people which like actual music. It's quite great for older people who are really searching for their music memories because they have a big, enormous amount of music there. Right. So, this is a different way of looking at things, like perhaps a site like Mobile Geeks or whatever will do.
Mm. I can kind of understand that. For example, when I talk to people that are 20 plus and I tell them I'm talking to pioneers in the computer field, for example, Forrest Moser, who invented the voice synthesis. Mm. And at this time I interviewed him like 3 years ago. He was 88. And what younger people ask me, like, how the heck did he even know how to start a Skype call? And I was like, well, this person invented electronic and computer stuff. I'm sure he can understand how modern technology works. Simple things like Skype calls shouldn't be a problem. But for the younger generation, 20 plus, this is like, wow, how did you manage to get him using Skype? And I was like, okay. So because when I approach people, many of those are 70s, 80s, or even above 90, and I never have this thought like, oh, maybe he has a problem establishing a call with me. I just go for it. As an email, they say yes. I send them my Skype name. They approve my contact request, and we do the call. It's never been a real big issue because of age, at least from my experience.
I think age is not a question of age. It's a question of your brain, how you see things, how you feel about things. I know quite a lot of people which are 40, and if it comes to technology, they act like they are 60 or 70s or 80s. Yeah. So it's not a question of real age. It's a question of your brain age, how you are willing to find out about new things. And if you are a developer or somebody from the early ages of electronic digitalization, because we had a lot of things before that. But if you're one of those guys, one of those women, I think you are willing to do it, and you can do it because you are used to that this damn machine doesn't do what you want. Right. It never did what you wanted it to do. But you find a way out to manage it anyway. And I think so. The problem you just described, that somebody who is younger says, hey, how did he manage to Skype? It's just a point like they don't know about technology behind, they just use it. And so I think it's not a digital native. Does not mean he's a digital understander. It just means he was born in an age where digital was everywhere and he can just use it. It's like me. Ask me about the oil in my car. I simply don't know where it is. It's not my business. And I think quite a lot of people also have the same feeling, the same acceptance of digital technology. They just use it. They don't know what is behind. They don't care about it, which is, on some places, very good, and in some places, very bad.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's become more of a computers and electronic devices have become more of an appliance that you have. It's like an oven that is there and you use. And I remember back in, way back when, you'd get a piece of software, and if there was something wrong with it and it didn't do what you wanted it to do, well, you had to figure out how it worked and fixed it, because you weren't getting updates, you weren't getting bug fixes. It's like this disk was all you had, and if it won't print, then it's your job to make it print. And a lot of kids, or not kids, but a lot of people today, even adults, they've grown up with this abstraction layer between them and the machine, where it's like they can click on a thing and it works, but actually how it works is lost at this point.
I think you're right, because especially if you think about the usage of computers, in my early computer days, I was a freak because I knew about computers something.
Right.
And if you could that days say something like AutoExec-BAT, you have to check the AutoExec-BAT to check something. Whoa, you were an expert.
Right.
Okay, just because you know about the word. And so I think it has changed quite a lot, which is very good for the industry, because people just use their smartphones. They don't think about it. But sometimes it's very bad for that, what happens to us. If you look at the way how we were trained to accept something which shows up on our displays. We were trained to believe what's showing up here must be the truth, must be right.
Right.
And now we learn in a hard way, this is not true. It depends on who is sending it. Starts with viruses and all that stuff, which you had on disk that days. And now they came through the internet to you. And now it's up to things like news and stories and the way how to tell people something about politics, about, I don't know, climate change, things like that. So you say, on one hand, there will be no Greta Thunberg without the internet. She is only a girl, 16, 17 years old, right? So without the internet, she never could have get those impact.
Right.
On the other hand, I don't know if some politicians which are in charge now would be elected if there was no internet.
Yeah. It has made there's a profound impact that it's had on everything, and not a good impact a lot of times.
I think it's something like that, It had good times and bad times, and the problem is you can't get the one without the other one. So you have to accept both. But what we can do is, and this is perhaps one of the things we're trying to do at Digisaurier, we're trying to give the people an idea of what that means, although on their social impact life, not only on their social media life, on their social life they have every day, what it means if they are in Facebook, if they are on Twitter, if they are on Instagram, and how to get done with all those things in a good way. That's what we're trying to do, but it's a hard job.
Well, I mean, I've mentioned it a couple of times. I have been recognized at the bakery, in the Central Railway Station. That is because somebody saw an interview I did with a tech pioneer on YouTube. It wouldn't have happened if I wasn't doing all those interviews. Then nobody would have even known about me. Then I would have been just another customer buying his breakfast,
Which, by the way, would not be the worst case you can have in your life. So it's okay if you're not recognized by anybody and you're not a celebrity. But I think, what is more important, if you do what you do, really from your heart, then people will find out that you do it from your heart. And then you get those reputation that the next one goes to your show and the next one goes to your show. So this is much more important. You can produce this, you never could have done this 20 years ago. You can put the whole thing on air, which you never could have done 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And you could do the idea of your interviews in the way you like it. And if you find out that people also like it, then you get your audience. And that's it, which was different in the first days of when I was starting with TV.
Mm-hmm. Going back to the Nolan Bushnell example, for example, for us it was pretty easy. I was interviewing Walter Day. He thought the interview was pretty cool. He's friend with Nolan Bushnell, so he emailed Nolan Bushnell, CC'd me in the email, said, "You want to be interviewed by this guy? He's really good." And that was it. A matter of 10 minutes. So that just to play on this reputation thing, that was one of the easiest interviews I could get, and you said it was one of the hardest for you. So that's a totally different perspective.
Yeah, sure, but just think about the first thing you just said. You sent an email. I couldn't. There was no email address from Nolan Bushnell or from whom else. So what I have to do is I have to do the classical journalistic research, means getting a phone book of Sunnywear at that time, trying to find out which was the last company you know from, then trying to find out if those guys he was before still are willing to give you an address where he's going to, and then, trying to get hold of him, which is a complete different thing nowadays. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is, when I was in US, and you were trying to get an interview with Nolan Bushnell, which that days was he was doing quite a lot of new things, and he was interested in getting public, but not so much in Germany. So then you call him up and say, "Hi, Mr. Bushnell, I'm Christian Spanik. I'm working for German television." He said, "Uh-huh." And you said, "It's ZDF." And he said, he didn't say it, but it was, "Never heard of it. What's it?" Yeah. This is the biggest television station we have in Germany, one of the both. So, it was a real much more harder way of convincing people to do something with you, which has changed quite a lot now. I think it's good that it has changed, and it makes your job much easier. And I think that what you're doing there is a great job, because what you're doing is you're conserving people who you don't know how long they will live anymore. And they did so much for that industry. It's important to talk to those people. And nowadays, to be honest, I have more people where I have to go to funerals than anything else from that bunch of people I know.
Right. Because
something happens. They not only have to be 80 or 90 years old. Some of them are 50 or 45. It's just, illness, whatever. And suddenly those people are away, and you have never chance again to talk to them. For example, one of the guys I really wanted to interview, and we didn't manage it in time, was Gerold Hahn, who was the official press person of Commodore in Germany. And, suddenly I got a call from his daughter, which told me, "I have to inform you that my father has passed away." And, I said, not because of the interview. First of all, I said, no. My whole feeling was, no, he was not so old. And then I found out what I have also lost, because this opportunity to ask him about those days in the beginning of the Amiga in Germany, all that stuff about after C64 and then changed to Amiga and all that stuff. He was a great person to tell, and I didn't manage it. This is really awful.
Mm-hmm. Now let's talk a bit more positive stuff. What are the stories you've managed to preserve?
It depends. First of all, we really covered quite a lot of stories about technology when it was actual. I started in with the computer shows in about 1992. So, and that was, I always had a camera with me, a video camera, somehow. Different ones. You have the really old ones, which was go with the tape, things like that, and later on the other ones. But I always was trying to make some moving pictures by myself. For example, from companies I was, to have an interview or to have some shootings or things like that. So, for example, it was the family Tramiel. Perhaps you're familiar with them, which were a family who really did quite a lot for all the guys who like Atari, because they really made Atari great from my point of view. So Jack Tramiel was he was already in about 50, I think, when I met him first time. So we did some interview with him in that days, which is quite different from doing it now. So, what you do now is talking with people in a retrospective. How do they see things now, with all the knowledge from now? What I had the chance to talk to people in the years when things were happening, which is very interesting because they see things different. Right. They tell you things where they are believing in, which did not work. For example, I had a great interview with the ex-CEO of Microsoft in Germany, who was talking to me about the secret of success from Microsoft, how they did it, even if they were not the best all the time. He told me, which I did not know, that there was a meeting between Bill Gates and Konrad Zuse on the CeBIT. I did not know about that. Though I preserved more the stories, not so much only the people. So if I search some material from the first Google handy, I have it here somewhere. On that side of the camera, there's all that stuff, all the cassettes, all that things like, hang on, I'll wait a second. Things like that, which is a Betacam SP. And it was a cassette which you put in a professional editing recorder. And the story is the Sony Vaio in the early days, when they started with the Vaio, when it was a big success because it was so small and so slim and things like that. This is still here on this material. And what I'm doing actually is, I don't know if you can see it here behind me. There are all those players and things to digitize that stuff. So
actually, you have blurred out the background, so we can't see.
Yeah. It's around here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you see all those machines, which were incredibly expensive these days. When 2 or 3 of those machines are at a price about 100,000 or 150,000 mark. Now I bought them for about 3,000 or 4,000 marks or euros, because they are much cheaper now because nobody needs them anymore. But I need them to digitize all the stuff. Right. So my focus is more about telling the stories, not so much only about the people. One thing we did at Digisaurier, which is not a moving picture, but we try to make moving pictures of it, is, for example, we told the stories of the woman in IT industry. We did a whole series about those women from Ada Lovelace. Everybody knows her, but a lot of people don't know, for example, Miss Hooper. Miss Hooper is a great person who did quite a lot of great things for computers and for computer industry. So these are things we are focusing on, trying to find stories which are not only person-driven, which are also driven by the things which came out, and we're trying to find all those old interviews in that days when those people were acting and were in charge, because it's a different story to talk to them in the very moment they, for example, if you remember when Atari started with the transputer chips, so they were curious about it. And Alvin Stumpf, the former chief of Atari, gave us interviews about the transputer and how he will change the industry. Yeah, but he didn't change Atari. they didn't make it. Or, for example, when Atari had this, I don't know how it was called, a gaming console, which a color display. I don't know if you remember that.
The Lynx.
Yeah, Lynx, right.
Yeah.
Which was not a big success at all.
No, it wasn't. Yeah.
But we have an interview with those guys when they told us this will be the next big thing, it will be great and things like that. So it's a different way of telling a story, like you do it now when you talk to people in a retrospective way than you do it in the actual moment when they were doing things. So, for example, great example is David Nagel. David Nagel was one of the in US one of the technology high flyers at Apple, and we were doing an interview with him, and we were talking about things which were not there, but he thought will be important in the future, whatever that means. And one of the things he was talking about a network. I said, I would love to have a system where when I change place and I change device, then I can have all my data with me without just, making disks and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And we are talking about 1996 or something like that. So the internet was somewhat here, but the idea of having a cloud-based service was not there. But there was something in his head trying to describe something, which he now, when you ask him now, he will tell you, I thought in 1996 about, and he can tell you what he thought about. In that days, when I did the interview with him, we both couldn't describe what he was thinking about.
Right.
But it was a great idea, and in that case, it works.
Yeah. Well, we do a lot of Commodore-based stuff, and you get you hear the stories over and over again from guys like Bill Hurd and whatnot that were big in Commodore, and it's always about this is kind of where things went wrong, and the marketers were taking care of things here, and that's why this flopped and the LCD never happened. But like you said, it would be amazing if we could see an interview from them from 1986 when they were in the middle of this, working on it, and see the difference. Because again, everything he's talking about is based on retrospect, on looking back at it. This was a terrible mistake, but at the time, that was gospel. That's what you were working on, and that was going to change the world, And I mean, it's super important to be able to put it all in context, really. Because attitudes do change over time.
Yeah, I think. Did you guys ever saw the *Halt and Catch Fire* TV series?
I didn't know.
No.
Check it out. It's on Amazon or Netflix or whatever. It's *Halt and Catch Fire*, and if you watch the first season, it's so much of the feeling of Commodore and Amiga and all this stuff, because it's about a startup. I mean, that days we haven't called it startup. It was a young company, yeah. But right. It was a startup story of a guy who decided the computers have to be different, and it's like a Steve Jobs style story. But the funny thing is, if you watch it and you know about the history, you see there is something in from Apple, there's something in from Atari, there's something in from Amiga and Commodore and stuff like that, because they try to put together all those stories to one story. How was it? And it's just great. It's the first season is the best. Second is okay, but first season is one. If you have an idea of the history, it's great to watch it. So I really recommend that.
So now let's talk about one thing. When I talk to many youngsters, like 20 plus.
Youngsters. Dude, we're not that old, dude.
Yeah. Well,
old Joerg is talking to youngsters. You're right.
Hello,
so, okay,
youngster.
old man, tell me.
Yeah.
Well, I'm turning 38 next year, so hey.
I'm 56, so what?
Exactly. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Anyway, it is something that's happening in the Generation Z, as they call it nowadays, the last generation, that those people are not really interested in the history of how things happened in technology, society. Many people tell me, "Oh, it's nice that you are doing such interviews and talk to the old people, but why should I be interested in that?" That's often a comment I hear. Or when I go to shows like like Gamescom, the young kids tell me, "Oh, I'm so happy that I didn't live back in the day." So,
you know, and I wanna preface that too by what I mentioned earlier about this stuff becoming more of a like an appliance, something that you just use every day, and something that I've noticed is that back in the 80s and even the 90s. Computers were a hobby. Like, you were a guy that was interested in computers. And it almost feels like that doesn't exist anymore because computers are a thing that is ubiquitous. Everybody's got one. And it would be the same as me being like, my hobby is a microwave. Mm-hmm. You know? And so,
okay.
Right. So I feel like a lot of people are kind of losing interest in the history of it because, again, it's not something where, how it works isn't so much important to them anymore. Like when we when we messed with the Commodore, it was important to know the history of it and the players involved because and how everything worked and how that derived from other machines and whatnot because that was kind of like that was sort of like your hobby and your passion and whatever. Whereas now it's like it's a box that I watch YouTube on and. How the history of it and what happened to get there is maybe not as important to people.
I don't know. I don't know if it's not so important to them. I think this is, again, both sides of those story. I think if you're trying to tell somebody something, which he is, in first row, not interested in. Mm-hmm. And by the way, this is, I would say, 80% of things you find through which media ever which comes to you. You are not interested. You have so much things to consider. Your I don't know, your teacher's talking to you, your colleagues are talking to you, you read newspapers, in which kind of form ever now. You have so much input that the first thing is that, hey, stop. I don't want to know. Even if you don't say it, you say, oh, this is very interesting, but also something different. So the first question is it relevant to the people? And the only way of giving them an answer to that is to make it relevant to them. So if you do a story which is not very, very interesting and engaging to a lot of people, you have to think of how to tell it. It's not a question of if it's important to them. It's a question of, do you manage it to make it important to them? Because that's your job as a journalist, for example. You should know that. You should know that Commodore was important. You should know that quite a lot of things you now using will be not there if something wasn't happening. Mm-hmm. And I did a TV show several years ago about the history of a part of Germany, Niedersachsen. And honestly, nobody cares about it, first of all, because I don't want to have history in my TV. But what we did is we find a way of telling those stories about the history from the Stone Age to now. Mm-hmm. For that people that were willing to watch 1.5 hours, and we had really good ratings on that show. So it can work, but, and this is the point, it's quite a lot of work, and it does not work on any story. Right. But if you have a story to tell, which is in your heart and in your mind, and you have the ability to tell it, you have the craft of telling stories, then I think you can manage it. And this is why I think something like Digisaurier, for example, is a way of doing it, trying to do that. So if you come to the website and you see the first story about, I don't know, Ada Lovelace, we are just searching about Lovelace because you have to do something in school about her, something like that. Mm-hmm. And then you find out, whoops, there's a whole series of stories about women in IT, Yes. And you find out that we tell you there's a woman without hair. Steve Jobs and Bill Gates will have big trouble in inventing a graphical interface if she was not there at that time, long before. And suddenly perhaps you think, hey, I should perhaps read that or watch that. This is the idea of journalism. It's not the idea of telling you things which are really important to you, because those things are a part of the classical news story. It's happening now. Those guys are meeting somewhere in the world. Somebody is trying to burn up the whole Amazonas. Yeah, I'm interested because I know it's a problem. But by the way, I just found out in a kind of, which was really incredible, in a kind of thread somewhere about somebody who said, hey, I heard Amazon is burning and I have a problem. I just ordered something by them. I don't know if I get it now. And somebody told him, no, it's not Amazon, it's the Amazonas, you know? And then he answered, oh, it's not Amazon. Oh, great. I was really angry about, anxious about that. I didn't get my stuff. He did not know what the Amazonas is and how important it is to him. He didn't know. It was a story. I don't know if it was a meme or it was really true, but it was a thread I saw on, I don't know where, one of the social networks. And I think, yep, if you're not interested in the Amazonas because you think, hey, it's so far away, then perhaps you or me, we can't help those people. Right. But anybody who is somehow interested in his world he is living in, somehow, we just have to make it easier for him to engage with our stories and tell him our stories. And then it will work, I think, I hope.
Yeah, well, just like here in Germany with Rezo making a video about the climate change and political matters. And suddenly everybody here in Germany is talking about the climate change. And a Swedish teenage girl who is an activist and started Fridays for Future. So... sometimes things have just to happen. Or another example would be Article 13 for the EU law. That was also a big topic here. So sometimes some things have to happen, and then suddenly the society is interested,
Yeah, but talking about Rezo, about those YouTube video, the interesting point was Rezo was not saying, I will talk to you about climate change. What he was saying, it was his quote on the video was, how to destroy a party, in that case, the CDU, which is something like the Democrats, like the Republicans in the US. So he did not say, I want to talk about climate change. He said how to try to translate it for US. He made shortly before an election a video which was saying how to destroy the Republican Party, which is a complete different thing. And then he was talking most of the time about climate change. So I think what he was doing, he was trying to make a headline which engages you on the first, and then he was trying to deliver a quality of speech, because it was a talking-only video. He delivered a quality of speech which engaged quite a lot of young people. That's why they watched it in millions of YouTube clicks.
Right. And that was over an hour, which is not the normal average time a youngster, even if you don't like the phrase, would watch a video.
Yeah, but to be honest, it was a rant. I mean, it was not a very balanced speech about climate change and how parties have lost the connection to the important story and how they have lost the connection to young people. It was not a balanced speech. It was a rant. And this is the only thing which I'm anxious about, is about people, as long as they are arguing in a rant way, in a very angry way, in a very rough way, blunt way, then it works. If you don't do that, it's much harder to get heard. And this is one of the things I really don't like at the actual situation in media.
How do you fix the audience interest problem on Digisaurier, or don't you even bother with looking at the statistics, how many people look on your articles, read them, and what is the most interesting topic?
I'm doing what I did all the years I'm in media now. I'm trying to make a kind of scorecard, I mean, there are some articles I know they will run because they have a great headline, they have a great story. And then I put all the first time articles where I know it's harder to read them, but because of the other stuff, people coming, watching, reading, and we see that they are, going, they stay longer on the site. So you're trying to read other articles. And so I think I'm always trying to make a kind of package what you get. And you do that within your text. You do that within the whole site. You do it within your story or your video. So the most important thing is trying to make a good balance between, it's you call it, after all, storytelling. Yeah, it's tell you something which, just watch TED Talks, which is a great example for how people only talking with not big PowerPoint things, which just some examples.
Some do. Some TED Talks are with PowerPoint presentations.
Yeah, they can use PowerPoint, but the question is, if the PowerPoint your blind sheet, all the text you are telling people is also on your PowerPoint sheet, which is the most awful way of presenting a story.
Yes,
you write everything down and then you just read it and then you put more and more stuff around it. It doesn't make sense. But if you look at TED Talks, you see what they do. They do a kind of dramatization. They're trying to tell you a story which engages you. Then they go to the points which are not so interesting, coming back to something which is interesting. So it's always a kind of game between you and the person who is listening or watching. And this game is hard to play. It's my lifelong role play.
Interesting.
So I'm looking at the website, the Digisaurier or Digisaurier, however you say it. And there are a lot of articles on here already. I mean, it's pretty well populated. And right off the bat, I've already found what the hell are kids doing on TikTok, which is something I've been asking for like 3 months now. So this is actually very useful.
You see, the funny thing is, these are articles where we know, especially the TikTok thing, which helps us quite a lot for reach, because people are searching something like that.
Right.
So they're searching like, what is TikTok, or what can I do at TikTok? And then our articles rank because they exactly tell about that. And the more the Google algorithm is going to watch for the real content, not for buzzwords, which are 15 times in the text, more for the content and how long stay the people there, the better it is for us. So all the Google updates in the last, let's say, 1.5 years were positive for us.
Just skimming it. I mean, I'm on the front page and there's 3 articles that already I'm like, I'm going to have to add that to my reading list because it's stuff that is relevant in that I've been asking,
Yeah.
Too bad it's German only.
Yeah.
No, mine. I don't know how well you can see this, but mine has
you can translate, right?
Translated automatically. It didn't even ask me to translate. It just translated.
Yeah, this is Mom Google is caring for us.
Yeah.
Translating the stuff. So why should I do it if they do it?
Right.
No, to be honest, Jörg, you're right. There could be the idea of doing it international, but from our point of view, it doesn't make so much sense because we are concentrating it's not only a question of the language; it's a question of the of the people. What are people interested in? The TikTok story will work worldwide, I think.
Right.
But other stories we have never will. So it doesn't make sense to make all the efforts to translate it. And if somebody really wants to understand it, he can use those translation things also, because they are there.
Right.
So I don't have to do it by myself. But I think in days when we did the computer books, we had to find somebody, another publisher in US or in Spain or in Italy, who was translating the books and bringing it on the market. This is over now. There are no people I need to be somewhere in US. If somebody is interested in our stories, he will find us. If not, he doesn't. I mean, he lost nothing.
Right.
He wasn't interested in it, so he would never do the work you just did, AJ, and say, hey, translate this please for me that I can understand it. They will never do that because they are not interested in the story at all. So I think it's important to understand that your stories, whatever stories you're doing, are not for everyone. Never. They're only for a special group. And to be honest, if you just look at Facebook groups or LinkedIn groups or things like that, you find out the smaller the smaller the group is you have, and the more they are real people, not bots and not people just hit it like because of I don't know what. The better the engagement, for example, in a live session is, because you can create higher live session engagements with 500 people, friends, lovers, however you will call it, or what the social network does. You can have more engagement than with 50,000. If those 50,000 are not really engaged in the basic of your story. So this is why I think we have to consider that it is not important to have the biggest website in the world. This was long years ago an important part. When you remember the beginning of Facebook, everybody was looking about how many fans does the site have. It was absolutely bullshit, like we know now. We didn't know at the time. But now we know it doesn't help you anything. You can have 6 million followers and they don't engage at all. You don't know why, because 3 are from some from India, from a click farm, and the other ones are just like Nutella, because they like Nutella, but they never engage with Nutella. So it's important to find the right audience group and the right size for the story you have, and then it's okay. I mean, just think, Germany had about 80 million people living here, and about 10 million are watching the Tagesschau, which is the most important news show we have. So just think about that. I mean, which means the relation is quite a lot didn't watch Tagesschau. I don't know what they're watching. Probably watch RTL 2 news, which is something like celebrity news more than real news. But for them, it's okay. So I think it's important to decide which is my audience, how great can it be, how can I naturally grow in my audience if I have a website like yours. What you're doing is, if people are interested in computer history, they have no chance of getting beside you. They have one day earlier or later, they will find your interviews and your stuff you're doing.
Thank you. That's very kind
no way
of
out.
you. That's very kind of you. Thank you.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's kind, but it's true. You can't. When I was researching before we know each other, I found the site because you had interviews. But hey, great! Look, there's Nolan again. Things like that. That was before we know each other. So
yes, it's true. It's true. When I contacted you through Facebook, the first reaction you had was like, oh, I was looking at your content already, so I know who you are. No introduction needed. I was like, okay, that was very easy.
You say that's how easy it is nowadays.
I've got a question for you, just because I'm curious about your opinion on this. Because you mentioned earlier on in the podcast how TV, plain TV is going away.
Yeah.
Now I've got a background in journalism, writing, newspapers, magazines, that sort of thing. And that also is kind of disappearing to the point where where traditional publishing is almost that's disappearing soon, pretty soon. There's so much. It's so much easier to get your stuff and get it out there and around where people can see it. Mm-hmm. What's your opinion on this? Because to me, it feels like on one level, it's a good thing because a lot of people that were good at this, that were good at writing fiction or making movies or whatever, have so many more avenues to release their stuff. But on the same token, it's like anybody can release their stuff. So yeah, there might be one or two that are really good, but then you've got 80,000 that are nonsense that are also releasing. So it's a real mixed bag for me, and I'm just kind of curious how you feel about the way it's everything's transitioning to this.
Mm. It's a two-phase situation from my point of view. First thing is, you're right when you say people now can publish. They just can do it. Mm-hmm. Before you had the gatekeeper like a TV station or your editor-in-chief or something like that.
Right.
But now you have a gatekeeper who is called YouTube, and it's not a person which you can argue with. It is an algorithm. Mm-hmm. And this can be very, very painful for people who are successful on a platform. Just look at the whole story from YouTube for the last 3 years. In the last 3 years, YouTube changed its behavior to the creators very, very much. You could read about it, you can hear about it. Mm-hmm. And those guys suddenly lost their monetization because suddenly YouTube changed some part of the how to be successful at YouTube things.
Right.
And they were not warned, they were not able to discuss with them or to say, hey, we have to think about that and that and that in my thing. For example, we have in Germany a guy who is doing very successful YouTube channel about how you call it, Steinschleuder.
Slingshot.
How?
Slingshot?
I don't know. You know those things where you you shoot. Yeah. So
I don't know. AJ, is
it
slingshot?
That's a slingshot. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the funny thing is, this guy now had a problem because one of the YouTube of the new rules of YouTube was nothing with weapons.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. I actually spoke to AJ about Fairtube.
Yeah.
You know, AJ, we spoke about that.
Yeah.
And what Christian means is Joerg Sprade. Yeah. And AJ, you said they will ignore him.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So just think about it. You have millions of people watching your videos about those things.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. I would never have watched it, but he had an audience who was dedicated to such stories. Great. And then suddenly somebody says, oh, this is something like a weapon. And because we had to have a discussion with our advertisers, and this was the story behind, we killed it. We just lower it down. You don't get your reach anymore.
Right.
This is real bad. So there is still a gatekeeper. And so after all, we can say it hasn't changed too much. I know more people who want to be successful, want to be a YouTube star, than people who are YouTube stars.
Right.
And it's the same thing we had in journalism in the days before. We had quite a lot of people, some very talented, where you say, hey, this person didn't make it. Why? You don't understand it. He writes great stories. She had great ideas. Everything great, but they didn't manage it somehow. You don't know why. Mm-hmm. And somebody like me, who is perhaps not so talented like those person, made it. I don't know why. Just lucky punch. It's really true. I mean this honestly. It was a lucky punch that I was able to get in journalism. But
right.
It's the same thing is with TV stations, with magazines and co. So I think it is important that there is a gatekeeper. I think it is important that gatekeepers think about their responsibility on that, what they are doing there. Mm-hmm. I think it is important that they find out that they are making our world in a very, very special part of it, in media relation, in knowing about stories. And this is why I think it is a two-faced story, a two-sided story. Because on the one hand, I said, yeah, now you just go and publish, do it. Take your webcam, take your PC, go out and tell the world about whatever you think what is important. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, I think there are quite a lot of people which are doing things now, which I personally think we would have been better off without them doing this.
Right.
Without them telling stories, without them engaging people. Mm-hmm. But it's not about lying. It's not about, in Germany, the term of Lügenpresse, of fake news stuff. It is simply that if you tell your side of the story, this is okay. If you're trying to tell your side of the story with quite a lot of fake content, mm-hmm. It is not okay. But who decides what is true and what is okay and what not? An algorithm at the moment can't do it.
Right.
So there must be people doing it. So this is a point where we are in a very, very special situation, which we never had before, because we always had people before deciding. Mm-hmm. Now we have something where we really don't know. Nobody from us knows what really is happening at Facebook.
Moderation crew,
something like that. We don't know what they do. What are they seeing? What do they get? What is the algorithm letting through? I don't know. You don't know, because this is a big secret. But mm-hmm. We don't know. But it changes our world. It changes the way we talk to each other.
Right.
And this is something which is a problem without having that what you just said, magazines or TV stations or whatever. But the question was never if print is going away. I don't care about it.
Well, yeah, I don't think it ever will.
I care about stories.
Right.
If they are coming through my PC or if they're coming on paper, I don't care as long as I can get them. Mm-hmm. But what I'm caring about is how honestly is the story, how well crafted is the story, how much effort was going in that story. And now this is, from my point, the biggest problem we have in classical news industry or journalism industry. It was too easy to earn money with journalism in the days before the internet.
Right.
It was too easy just take some agency news, mm-hmm. print it, and say, this is your newspaper.
Yeah.
And because if you were living in Stuttgart and you're reading Stuttgarter Nachrichten or, I don't know, the New York Times and the Pennsylvania Inquirer, you never found out that both have this exactly same story. Nobody cared about it. It was just a news agency.
Yeah, they pulled it off of the AP or something and stuck it in there.
Right. You did not know. And the cheaper the publisher could get his content, mm-hmm. the worse it was, but nobody knew. There was no alternative.
And now we have the sponsored stories that you get in a lot of the smaller ones, because they'll actually pay to put the story in, and it's total nonsense because it's just meant to sell something.
Right. So this is why I think it's I think it's an own podcast talking about the media industry, but we made mistakes 20 years ago, and the internet make them visible. Mm-hmm. And now the whole thing is like those, I don't know, you know these tic-tac balls where one clicks on the next, mm-hmm. and the pendle is a, what is a pendle? Joerg, help me. What is pendulum?
Good question.
Pendulum.
I know those.
I know the balls. I don't know what they're called.
Yeah, I don't know. But that it's the other thing which says if those thing is playing out that way and it goes back, it's going back the same way.
Pendulum.
Sorry?
Pendulum.
Okay, that was easy. So, and that I think the pendulum was somewhere here before the internet.
Right.
And now it's going back. The only question I have is I don't know, is it already here or is it worse to come? I don't know. What I hope is that we find those not so large scales we have now at the moment. If we find a way of moderating the whole story, then it will be, from my point of view, okay again. Although with the internet, it's not a question of the internet; it's a question of people who are making media.
Yeah, I'm hoping that the current influx of there's a lot of attention being spent revealing like that a lot of the stuff that you see online is not real, and it is a fake story meant to do something. And I'm hoping that this will encourage people to research what they're reading a little bit better. I don't have great faith in that, but that's my hope. But if that happens, then things can get a little bit better. But if not, you get a lot of. I hear it all the time from people where they say something that's just wrong, and I'll say, well, that's not true, and their answer is, well, that's my opinion, and I'm entitled to an opinion. I'm like, no,
even if it's wrong,
right?
Yeah.
That's not an opinion. That's just wrong. Like your an opinion is I don't like fish, right? An opinion is not fish are not an animal.
Right.
That's not an opinion.
but the problem is, what we found out is, I never thought that this can happen. But the funny thing is that people obviously don't care about if it's true or not, as long it is in their alley, as long as it's their opinion.
Reinforces a belief they have already.
Right.
Yeah.
This is a bad thing. Just think about quite a lot of politicians we have in charge now. They are telling the people things, then somebody came around and say, hey, this is not true. But because the things those people are telling them, they like more than the truth. So they just blend away the truth. Right. So if you don't think about climate change because you are in coal industry, I can imagine, I can understand that. But the problem is, as long as somebody tells you, don't care about it, it's not true. My way is there's no climate change. And people say, oh, this is great. And then they believe in it. Right. And the funny thing, we were trained to that as children. If you remember a thunderstorm and you were, 4 years old, 5 years old, and your parents told you, don't be scared, nothing will happen. It was not true. They could not know if there will be, a kind of a thunderstorm, a kind of blizzard, a kind of, I don't know what, coming to your house. They did not know.
Right.
But they told you, don't be scared, nothing will happen. And the funny thing is, you wanted to believe it. And this thing goes on and on. And so we were trained very early in believing something which helps us to get around a fear we have. And all the people, and this is one thing we have to accept, who are in their own bubble, in their own storyline thing, even if it's not true what they're telling or what they're hearing. But most of those people have a fear. And there's somebody who tells them, you don't have to be afraid. If Boris Johnson is telling the British people, you don't have to be afraid about the Brexit, then there's quite a lot of people who say, great, yeah, thanks, that's what I wanted to know.
Yeah.
That's it. It's since they're 4 years old. So I think it's, I hope with you, but I have my doubts.
Well, as we learned, there is no such thing as fake news. They are called alternative facts.
Yeah, alternative facts. Yeah.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
So where do you want to go from here with your portal? What's the next big step for you?
I don't think we have big steps. I had the last 2.5 months trying to figure out how I can arrange all the things I want to do with the real time I have, which is the biggest problem all the time. How many so many ideas, so many things to do, and so less time. But the last 2.5 months was quite a lot of thinking about the different formats I have. I mean, I have Facebook Live and YouTube Live. We have I got access to LinkedIn Live, which is a different kind of group of people. I was experimenting 2 months with LinkedIn Live. What do people like? How engage the people and all this stuff. And I'm actually still in a way of trying to find a way of doing. For example, how long can a show be? I mean, LinkedIn Live, they tell you, like all the live accesses, Facebook or YouTube tell you, be at least 30 minutes.
Okay.
Reality is people don't have time 30 minutes most of the time. So I wonder, how can I understand what they mean. They say if you're 30 minutes, we have longer time to play it out to the audience and get audience attracted. And then you get a lot of views or more views than if you're only 10 minutes. So I think I'm working on a kind of schedule for different shows, where you can count on the length, so that you know this show is not longer than 10 minutes. This show is about 20 minutes, and this show is 30 minutes or longer. So that you can decide by yourself if you want to see that. And then the next point is how to put the show in segments and play it out on different channels or on the same channel in smaller bits. Right. Because the most important thing is not that they watch the whole show. The most important thing is that the info, the story I have to tell, is there where the audience is. And sometimes the audience has time, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and sometimes they even don't have 2 minutes. So I'm trying to find out how can we do that. And in the last 12 months, we did a lot of experiments with reposting stories. Means we had a show about, I don't know, 3/4 of an hour, and then we put on the same channel smaller bits of the show. And I just wanted, perhaps now people would say, hey, I thought that, I knew that's what you did 2 weeks ago or a week ago. It didn't happen. It did not happen. The point is, you have to be aware that there are always more people who haven't seen the content you created than they have seen the content you created. Even in your small audience of a Digisaurier Facebook page or whatever. Because the algorithm don't play out to everybody. It plays out to parts. It depends on how sharp the content is, how focused it is, and things like that. And so because of that, that's where we just trying to find a way. For example, another thing we did, we started beginning of this year, we said there is no story in print, means as a text on Digisaurier, which not will be also a video story. We use special tools like cartoon video stuff or text video stuff or whatever. If you watch the story about the computer woman, you will find several videos in the meantime out there about those computer women, which are just telling in a short way the story which you can read. Right. Because we think sometimes it's better for you to read it. Sometimes you have more the option of watching it. It depends on how your personal situation actually is. If you're on a train station in Germany and the train is about 10 minutes late, you have 10 minutes time. You're glad and lucky that I have 10 minutes info for you where you can say, I have time, sitting down and watch it. If you got in the train and you were trying to watch a 10-minute video story in Germany, it will be a little bit hard because the connection of the net is not good enough. Right. You simply can't watch 10 minutes video in most of the German trains. Mm-hmm. It means then what you can do is you can read the story on a Digisaurier, or you put it in Pocket or whatever offline reader you want and read it in the train without having the connection. So what we say is we don't want to discriminate people through the content form. We want to try to give everybody access to our stories in every way he can. And this, for example, is also a question of this theme podcast, because podcasts can be longer because people are listening in it when they're driving in the car, making sports or things like that. They have much more time on a podcast than they have on a TV show or a kind of web show. So this is the most important thing for us, and it's an ongoing process. That's why I meant it's not one big thing we do. It's just several small steps going on and trying to make the content more accessible and more successful. That's it.
So where can people find your stuff?
The hardest place is LinkedIn because LinkedIn is really hard to find, and all this thing you did some weeks ago has to do with the way LinkedIn is organized in the stream, in the newsfeed. And that's a thing where I'm working on how can I make the oldest things I did on LinkedIn accessible. But first of all, easiest way is you can follow me on LinkedIn, on Facebook, or on Instagram, on the Twitter, to find out, because we were trying to put a part or the whole story on all the channels, so that you're not missing something. So if you're interested more in the things which Digisaurier is doing, you can follow Digisaurier. On LinkedIn, it's always a personal page, because it's the same, by the way, with Facebook. I think you know that a personal page always plays out better than a company page or a fan page. That's it. This is why I do a lot on my personal page. So the easiest way is just follow me on the platforms as a person, and then you will find all the content I have, and then you can decide that you say, okay, I want to be a fan of Digisaurier also. I want to be a YouTube abonnent from Digisaurier, something like that.
Yeah. And we'll put links to everything that you said in the podcast description below, so that people can click on them and check all that stuff out.
Great.
All right.
Okay, guys.
Okay,
so thanks for your time. Yes. Thanks for having me on the show.
No
if you need anything, just let me know. Okay?
All right.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
See you. Bye-bye.